that I kind of think about now that I would say I didn't used to think about is I would just play all the time, every day. Anytime anyone asks me, yeah, I'm playing, like I'm there for fun, for competition, whatever. I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of what my load is capable of in season and out of season. Something that I think is different from person to person. And it just takes time. Lifestyle is super big factor, and access is another big factor. For me, um, yeah, I think it just takes time to find your groove and what we're doing.
If you have been watching the podcast for a while now, you'll have seen me wear these primitive athletic tops. They are now available, and I'm really excited because I work out in them a lot. I tend to work out quite hard, but I also like to be comfortable. So that's why when I was picking out the materials for this top, I went with a pure cotton. If you would like to get yourself a top and support the channel, they are available on my website, primitiveathletics.com. Athletics with an X. Hello and welcome back to PA Chalk Up. Today we've got Paloma. Hi, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
It's all good. If you just give us a little introduction of who you are and what it is that you do.
Yeah, so I'm Paloma Bowman, and I'm currently a beach volleyball coach, a yoga instructor, and I am pursuing professional beach volleyball. I did the last 2 years pursuing my Master of Education in Intercollegiate Athletic Leadership, specifically in coaching. And then I was also a student athlete at the Division I level at various institutions, competing in beach volleyball and indoor volleyball. And my passions are beach volleyball, yoga, and pursuing athletics at the highest level.
Nice. So how was your journey been through? Obviously, you've mentioned that you were at indoor volleyball and then you transitioned to beach volleyball.
Mm-hmm.
How was that transition and did you get there?
Yeah, so it was quite a transition. It happened due to what I thought was an environment, an indoor, that I felt was toxic, and I didn't feel like it was in a place where it could be repaired. And multiple of my teammates had also felt that way. And so we fortunately had a beach volleyball program being built our sophomore year, and two way overqualified coaches that were way just so qualified, not being paid at their pay grade, but they took that program and transformed it. And I learned so much about myself and athletics. I think the biggest transition was going from indoor to beach volleyball. Is now the environment is a factor, the sun is a factor, being dehydrated is a factor like it hasn't been, wind is. And so to be able to learn how to take care of my body, it took even greater discipline and habits, and learning how I can more efficiently train in the beach, because it was like a whole new level than training indoor. I had to learn how to use different muscles, stuff like that. I would say that's the biggest physical transition. I was also learning how to go from being in a team atmosphere with 6 people on the court, an entire team cheering you on, to now it's 2-on-2, and you're fostering your own energy, you're fostering your own game plan, and it's a lot more independent, which I've learned to really enjoy the independence of beach volleyball. It definitely requires a lot more ownership and autonomy, which at first was hard because I've had this structure in place for so long as a student athlete. So learning how to navigate a new structure and kind of deciding for myself what that looks like was also huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was the sort of atmospherical impacts that you sort of had to deal with, and how did you deal with them?
Yeah. When I transitioned.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Um, my mental health is definitely, I think, the biggest factor and something that I learned to really invest myself in. So dealing with that, I started seeing sports psychologists and therapists, and they taught me new tools and ways to navigate my mental health and how to um, navigate like mindfulness and kind of different approaches to how to harness um, what at first seemed like a setback and make it kind of my
Mm.
superpower and um, know that everything is either kind of going to help you or um, give you the opportunity to kind of learn from it if you choose to allow it to.
100%.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So when you're sort of playing, you also mentioned that you're a yoga instructor now. How has that sort of led from sort of taking care of your mental health to now doing yoga and teaching yoga?
Yeah, so I would say I really care about yoga. It helped my own journey. I would say it taught me mindfulness, which is something that we also really took seriously at UW on our beach team. We would do 12 minutes of mindfulness each day before practice. And whether that was visualization, breathing exercises, box breathing, various different breathing techniques. I learned a lot of these techniques in yoga, and they
Mm.
have so many different impacts. But I was able to really take seriously the mind body connection through yoga, which is something I kind of dabbled in but didn't really understand um, kind of the anatomy of it. And I wanted to learn
Mm.
to help both my own performance and also those around me. And then the other part to that was I saw the mental health impact of my close family and friends. And I wanted to be a vessel for finding ways to navigate
Mm.
intense experiences in a way that's accessible and easy for anyone to kind of learn and navigate. And I feel like yoga is very accessible. You don't need any tools to learn it. It can look so many different ways and have so many different impacts. And I really believe yoga is a lifestyle that can help bring regulation to a lot of dysregulation that we see
Yeah.
across society, especially
Yeah.
now.
How has that? How important has that been for your athletic career, doing yoga and sort of these breathing techniques?
I mean, I would say it's the difference between winning and losing, but it's also the difference between my response to winning and losing and the impact that it has on me and the rest of my life. I think at some point, every athlete has felt that intense, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I lost. Like, this is the end of everything that I've ever worked so hard for. Just kind of that, like, over dramatic reaction that you might initially have. And it helps me kind of take a step back and be like, no, we're good. We're chilling. Like, we know how to, we've been here before. We know how to navigate this. Like, let me take a deep breath and like engage my frontal cortex again. Like, let me
Mm.
think rationally about how I can approach this situation. Um, and I think that's what yoga does. It allows you to take that extra breath before you react. And in sports, that's the difference between, you know,
Winning and losing.
winning and losing. Yeah, because there's such a finite amount of once you reach such a competitive level of
Mm.
kind of advantage that you gain. And I really think that mindfulness is something that takes out the a lot of the anxiety of these high pressure situations.
Yeah, that's actually something that's quite interesting to me. Is while you're competing at a high level, obviously your mind during like very specific, say tiebreakers or high pressure situations, your mind can just sort of take over. What are some of the processes that you go through to sort of quieten that voice down?
Mhm. I would say one is taking a deep breath. Deep breathing kind of helps bring me back. Two is like little mantras, internal things
Mm.
that I say to myself in practice. One thing that I really appreciate about UW, the beach coach, is he always told us like to come into practice with a focus, and he And he went through and gave us like this tool, like, okay, this is your intention for practice. Did you, complete this intention? What are you going to change next time, or what are you going to work on next time? So it takes a lot of the ambiguity of, am I getting better? Is there
Mm,
bias? Is there different kind of circumstances? And it lets you um, gauge your own progress and growth. So that's what I really, I think, liked the most.
yeah.
For
So
me.
is it essentially just having these little goals that you have to achieve during the sessions instead of like worrying about, oh, I need to make this or else? You've got this sort of, actually, let me work on these little steps to get better.
Right. Yeah. So an example of that would be, before I was like, okay, every pass has to be perfect. Every pass has to be perfect, which I can't control. No one can control if every pass is perfect. Like, maybe you get close, but that's kind of out of your control. But one thing I can control is, I'm going to make an intentional first step to my left at shuffle step,
Mm,
um, when I'm moving to my left, because I get beat down my sideline to the left. That's my weakness. That's the area I want to apply growth to. So this is what my
mm,
focus is going to be, and you can do that for each skill, and it helps take the. I hear a lot now that I've reached so I've learned so many tools. I can start to like pick up on a lot of old habits that I had,
mm,
and continued to break. But one of them was, I'm just working on everything right now, which you can't work on everything right now. And if you're working on everything, then um, you probably won't be getting better at everything. So I like the approach of like narrowing your focus and really setting an intention of, okay, this is my focus.
mm.
This is what helps me. And obviously, everyone has kind of a different approach, but that's what I really think works for me.
Yeah. So how does the training sessions pan out, and how is it that you go through your training sessions? Like, what's the content of them?
The content of my coaching or playing?
Playing, and then we'll go into coaching as well.
Okay. The content of my training now, it looks like there's various training groups that I have joined in Hermosa Beach, Manhattan Beach. And each coach has kind of various styles. So I can't say that there's one specific style.
Mm,
I coach with or play for one very technical coach. She likes very like two-step drills, um, kind of more making your brain think while you're playing. So that way, when you're in a situation in a game and you're having to think, or you're like, do I change my defense? Do I keep my defense? Do I change my offense? Like, we kind of get those reps of having
mm,
to think about multiple things in a practice setting, which I really appreciate. And they're also very fast paced, so you kind of get conditioning in as well. And then we also have some Brazilian trainers, and they are less technical, more focused on touches. So get as many ball touches as you can. So their focus is, the more volleyball you play, the better you get at volleyball. Very straightforward, which I like the balance of both. I like the
mm,
fast pacedness, but I also like the technical part, because I know that if I'm breaking it down and able to do it slow but correct,
mm.
then when I move at a fast pace, I'm going to be able to be super efficient in those movements. So I think they're both important, and I really value both of those.
Yeah. What's your favorite part about them?
About my training sessions.
Yeah. So that you've obviously got the very technical, and then you've just got the more touchies. What's your favorite part about both of them?
Yeah, so I would say my favorite part about the technical training is that it makes me feel athletic. Like, it makes me feel like,
Mm,
okay, like I'm using my left hand in this practice. Like, we yesterday we set with our knee, so we had to get to the ball really fast and be able to set the ball with our knee. Um, and each practice looks a little bit different, but it slows down a lot of the movements that we do at a really fast pace, and we work on them in a slower. kind of way.
Mm.
So we're able to break down um, kind of the basics. And since we're in off season, I feel like now's a really great time to do that. So I like that because it makes me feel like I'm practicing the most efficient ways to move my body, which over time, efficiency is going to allow you to play for longer and
Mm.
have better health. And, I want to stay mentally and physically healthy. So efficiency is so important.
100%.
And
Do
then,
you use? Oh, sorry.
oh,
No.
I was just going to talk about the more ball control
Yeah,
focus.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
That's fine.
it's just like it kind of brings out the dog in you. Like you're tired, you're just getting reps. You're like, all right, I'm digging deep. How do I stay focused? How do I stay engaged on just this one rep? There's another ball. As soon as I pass this ball, but how can I focus on just the next ball? Which, in a game, you kind of feel like the game's
Mm.
happening that fast at times. It may not be, but when you're in those high pressure situations, it kind of mimics that a ball gets served, another ball gets served, another ball gets served. Um, and you have to just pass, 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 trust your training, and kind of the muscle memory of it. So I think they both offer um, kind of different advantages and disadvantages. But I do think that you can gain something from
Yeah,
any training session and find value in it. Just kind of,
100%. That's actually very interesting because you're learning such a refined sort of skill pattern with one, but then you're almost kind of having to transfer that refined to that fast pace and just always on. How have you felt that transition with one another?
yeah, so I would say I've been training more on with the technical coach until recently. So I can't say I have like a big enough sample size.
Mm.
But from my experience so far, um, I think that yeah, I would say that it's been pretty transparent so far. But I am also around beach volleyball a lot.
Mm.
I live and breathe it, so it feels very kind of natural to bring one to the other. Because I play it, I coach it, I study it.
Yeah.
So
So with the coaching side of it, how have you sort of took everything that you've learned and now are applying to your athletes?
yeah, so my first and foremost, I think it's just always leading with compassion and understanding that no athlete is the same. And when you are working with athletes, like they're going to tell you what they need, and if you're listening, you'll be able to hear it.
Mm.
I think sometimes we forget as coaches that we can give our athletes space and they can figure things out on their own. And so sometimes it takes a little bit of guidance in the right direction, but I think athletes are intuitive with their bodies and we kind of innately know what to do with a little bit of guidance. And that's something that I try to focus on and also just share my experiences and what's worked for me because I love that I have these tools and I wish I could have
Mm.
even had them sooner. And so especially when I'm working with young athletes, you're working with people from different backgrounds, people with different abilities and disabilities and learning abilities. And so no matter who you have to be ready to kind of navigate or use your tools to see how they best learn information.
Mm.
Sometimes you have to break it down, sometimes you have to speed it up, um, and just kind of figure out what works best with them. But I always come in with like a plan and an intention for each skill that we're planning on working on. And making sure I'm communicating with my athletes regularly. Are you competing this weekend? Are you competing
Mm.
soon? Mindset, um, kind of working on how to take each rep at one time. You see a lot with younger generations, Gen Z, a lot of trouble with focus, um,
Mm.
always on kind of their phones, shorter attention spans. I'm noticing like higher levels of anxiety, maybe. I'm not an expert, but this is just what I've observed. And I think something that really helps young athletes is being able to kind of draw on their focus and helping them notice, just have a
Mm.
better self awareness of kind of how they're coming in and focusing for practice too.
Yeah. How important is it for you to have intent during your training sessions?
To have intention.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's like the it's so important. Like if I want to get better, like I have to come in with intention.
Mm-hmm.
So if I want to play for fun and not really think about it, like I definitely do that too. But if I'm like, okay, I want to get better at hitting, well, I know I'm gonna have to have some intention to get better at hitting. Excuse me.
All right.
So
With the intent side of your training, how important for you is it to also know how to switch that off and just play for fun as well?
yeah, so some things that I kind of think about now that I would say I didn't used to think about is I would just play all the time, every day. Anytime anyone asks me, yeah, I'm playing, like I'm there for fun, for competition, whatever. And now I've kind of dialed in what is going to allow me to continue to perform. Off season is a great time to like play for fun. In season, maybe, um, probably less likely to. In season, don't want to risk injury or overdoing training. When competition comes around, I want
Mm.
to make sure I'm fresh and ready to go, um, and also using the right technique and
Yeah.
efficient.
Yeah. How important is load management to you for your sessions?
For my training sessions, I would say I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of what my load is capable of, in season and out of season. Something that I think is different from person to person, and it just takes time. Lifestyle is super big factor, and access is another big factor. For me, um, yeah, I think it just takes time to find your groove and what works for
Mm.
you. I'm always reaching out to other people, other mentors and friends, that I aspire to learn more about, on how to be better in my nutrition, be better in my strength
Mm.
training, in my recovery, in my social life. Finding the balance and making sure that one quote that I really, try and think about is you can you can have it all but not at the same time. I think it's been said over and over. I just watched recently, Michelle Obama and Oprah, their little
Mm.
Netflix special together, and I think that is so true. Is you can't fill every cup all the time, and knowing which cups are
Mm.
prioritized is going to change. I think seasonally, um, and throughout your life. So, out of season versus in season, beginning versus end of season, I think are factors that I typically think about.
Mm.
Yeah.
How does your training schedule change from off season to on season?
Yeah. So I would say, like, for example, my lifting, when I'm in season, I'm trying to be more explosive, make sure I'm really good with my form. So when I'm training, I'm not getting injured, or when I'm competing, I'm not getting injured, and I still have those proper movement patterns.
Mm.
And when I'm out of season, I can do a little bit more load, in my lifts, focusing on more strength, um, still a little bit of power, but really working on, mostly strength and kind of heavier lifts, more reps. And
Yeah.
then same for conditioning. I would say conditioning like more endurance, in the off season, kind of building stamina, for in season, and then also working on my sprint movement patterns, right now. Usually, I don't try and mix those two. I want to focus on either form or endurance.
Mm.
So yeah, those are two main ways. Yoga is also another factor. When I'm traveling a lot and I'm in planes and seated, my hips get tight, my back gets tight. So being able to stretch, kind of stay
Mm.
stay mobile, in season is super important for reducing inflammation, for preventing injury. Um, so yoga has really helped me kind of on the mindfulness side, but also in the recovery,
Mm,
especially when I'm on the road. If I don't have a gym, I know I can pull out some stretches and a couple exercises, and I can kind of make it work when I'm on the road. Um, so I just like the flexibility, both literally
yeah,
and mentally, that yoga allows.
yeah. So with the sort of how do you schedule these sessions in with your training?
Which sessions?
The strength and conditioning sessions to your training sessions.
So I do them separately. Usually, I'll go to the gym the to lift with my boyfriend, and we'll do that usually on the off days that I don't have volleyball. So,
Mm,
um, but he does have specific days off each week, so it's usually just dependent on his schedule and when we can go lift. Conditioning, I'll also usually do on the off day. So after lifting, we'll go condition. Yoga, sometimes I like to do that before I lift, kind of as a warm up and just like to get that mental edge,
mm,
really knock out my lifts. Um, but yeah, I also like doing yoga on my off day, just
yeah.
to kind of reset, relax, and refocus for the week.
How important do you think strength and conditioning and yoga is to beach volleyball?
Well, I think it's super important for injury reduction. I think it also provides a mental edge. Being able to have reps of mindfulness
Mm,
um, is going to allow you to focus, I think, better in high pressure situations in life in general. And and if you can stay mindful, you're staying present and usually having a better experience, and also able to make more rational decisions, which is,
mm,
in those environments, like I want to know I'm making the best decision in that moment. If I look back on it on camera and know, like, yeah, like I did everything to prepare mentally to make the best decisions I could, and that's all I can control.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Um, Before we started recording, we were kind of talking about how student life is and being an athlete and everything else that you have to go on top of that.
Mhm.
How was that for you and how did you manage it?
Yeah, so student athlete, it definitely has evolved in what that means for me. I was a student athlete before and after uh, COVID. So my last 2 years of undergrad, which were the hardest 2 years, were online. The cool thing was my undergrad major is international relations with an emphasis in public health. So we were learning all
Mm,
about COVID. From history, politics to economics, and kind of anthropology. Everything was kind of interrelated. So it was a very relevant time to be learning about a pandemic. Definitely made my undergrad, I think, even though COVID was kind of what it was, it did
mm.
provide kind of that understanding of what's happening in the world, which was also really cool. And I'm super grateful that I had that because I know a lot of people had were struggling during COVID.
Mm. So how did you sort of then go into UW and how did you manage the academic side with the obviously athletic side?
Yeah, so I definitely had more systems in place with my experience from Davis, so I can manage my time. One thing was just write a list every day. These are my responsibilities when I'm in season versus out of season. Okay, I have to get my work done before the weekend because I'm traveling all weekend. I'll be on the road. Even if I do have downtime, is that what I'm going to want to focus on? Is homework? So, no, I would try and get all my work done before I would travel.
Mm,
And just learning how to manage my time and where I wanted my priorities to shift was huge. Um, and then taking less hours as I got closer into season um, was also huge for doing less work. And then as far as like managing like my body, like the mental and physical load of it, it would just be constant communication with all
Mm,
of the people involved. So that could be your coach, your trainer, your therapist, your tutor. Um, Keeping everyone involved, I think, helps me the most. And I noticed that I had the most positive experience once I established a community
mm,
um, and was able to communicate with various different groups. I think that's when I felt like the most um, kind of at home and in my element. So I think community is another big factor for me. And
yeah.
however you choose kind of to go to school, can you find
How
community?
did you how did you build these relationships and this community around you?
Yeah, so I'm fortunate in that I had various groups. So I was in my IAL program, which are mostly athletes, former athletes, and coaches. So that is 40 people right there
Mm,
that I was able to connect with. During my last year, we had like a 6 week intensive 9 to 5. We were in class all day. Each week was a new course. So we were moving pretty quickly and we were all kind of together. So we bonded fast. That was definitely something that I really appreciate was how close we all got as a cohort. And
mm,
that's one of my biggest kind of group of people I saw every single day on campus in various different departments. You know, Colin was in football, you were in football. We had people in video and media. There was people in
mm,
diversity and inclusion, fundraising. And so you just kind of have people that you know all over and are able to talk to, see friendly faces, which is something that I really appreciate. And also just like the connections that I still have from working in like the Tai Club in fundraising. Some of the IL cohort also work there, so we're all super close still. And just kind of having different outlets and
mm,
communities to be a part of gave me both perspective and also connections that kind of made me feel at home. I think that was probably the furthest I've been from my family and friends for the
yeah,
longest period of time. So it was definitely something that I had to learn, and it wasn't innate in me. But I'm really grateful for the bonds that I developed while I was there.
yeah. Big shout out to Colin as well, because I know how intense his schedule was. Because
Yeah.
like we would essentially be in the gym from like 6, half 6 to 7, and I think he would be there till like half 8, and then he'd have to show off to class, and then he'd do a full shift like schoolwork, and then I'd catch him afterwards, or we'd like speak afterwards, and he was like, "What's happened?"
What just happened? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and sometimes it's just like that. Like sometimes you're just trying to manage, and it's not going to be super easy to manage everything all at
Mm,
once when you have a lot of busy seasons. But that's why I kind of put tools in place regularly, habits, so that when situations are more stressful, then I have
mm,
these tools and resources to lean back on that can help me navigate whatever kind of situation arises.
yeah. How would you advise someone to sort of build this sort of safety wall around them to help them process everything that's happening as a student athlete?
Could you be more specific?
So like you obviously had this sort of network of people that you could go to and speak and just help you process everything that was happening. How would you like advise someone to sort of start building these connections and relationships?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, first be resourceful and sustainable with it. Look at what's around you first. You don't have to go out and join 10 different groups. Like, if you have your coworkers at work, ask one of them to lunch after, or
Mm.
if you do want to reach out to someone, kind of how you reach out to me on LinkedIn, and then we went through Instagram. It's can be as simple as that. I've had a couple job interviews that started through LinkedIn, and yeah, connection. I would say usually, in my experience, I've been really lucky to have connection from family and friends.
Mm.
But I know that's not necessarily the case with everyone. So I would say if you have access to internet, I think use that, use social media, reach out to people via social media. I think there's so many people willing to help if you
Mm.
are able to just reach out and know the kind of resources to help you. I mean, if you don't know who, then ask someone that maybe knows someone else.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I think that's been like the thing that's been the most helpful is the importance. Something I've also learned in my TIE internship in donor engagement and stewardship. It's how to foster relationships, short and long term, and that means, you know, being friendly, communicating, maintaining that relationship. Like, do you connect with them? Do you check back in with them? Um,
Mm.
and are you up to date on what their kind of world is? So say you're reaching out to a strength and conditioning coach, and their soccer team just had a great season. Are you congratulating them on their season before you go ask them for information? Stuff like that. I think just being
Yeah.
intentional and genuine about your connections is super important. I think that's probably the biggest takeaway I had from stewardship that I think I learned.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like Collins sort of he's got the exact same advice, and it's just like making sure that you're like constantly communicating and building these networks with people who like you can sort of see them as more than just, oh, he's just someone I know. It's like this connection that he's doing something cool. Let me support him when he's doing some cool stuff. Let me reach out when they're winning. Let me do something while they're like sort of just going through the same process as I am.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think we're all kind of looking like no one has it all figured out, and so I think everyone's usually pretty willing to help
Mm.
everyone if we just kind of go ask for it. So yeah, it's really hard to do something that I struggle with. It's not super easy, but I'm always gonna give the benefit of the doubt and be a friendly face to everyone
Mm. I
and
like it. Will
never
Smith has got
sure.
Will Smith has got a quote where it's like it's the 10 seconds of madness, and he essentially gives him 10 seconds. He gives himself 10 seconds where he's just like, if for these 10 seconds, I'm going to make a fool out of myself, but hopefully it leads to something like a relationship or a connection with someone. I
Right.
think that's a really important thing to sort of apply in your daily life.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like to pursue anything that you're passionate about, you have to have some courage and bravery for, you know, I just made a TikTok reel about how, that sound over where
Mm.
it's like, oh, and what gave you the confidence?
Yeah, I think I've seen it. I'll play it
Yeah.
out
And it's like,
if you don't mind.
yeah. And it's, oh, yeah.
Turn this up.
Yeah. That one.
Which is 100% right. You
So,
sort of just have to.
yeah, you just have to do it. I was talking about it for long enough, and it's like at some point you're either going to keep talking about it or you're going to do it. Um, and for a while, obviously, there's like factors you have to consider. Like, do I have a plan? Am I ready to take on clients? Like,
Mm.
do I have a website? Like, financially, is this a good decision? There's like kind of logistics you do have to consider kind of before do your research, I would say, and also
Mm.
mentors are huge. I reached out to a couple mentors before I started my business, and made sure that I was doing things the most efficiently and effectively, and that I wasn't going to make the obvious mistakes that maybe someone who didn't do their research would make.
Mm.
So
Do you want to sort of talk about your business and the process that you've sort of went through with it?
Yeah. Definitely something that, in some capacity, I knew I wanted to do a business in health and wellness. What that looked like, I wasn't sure. I just knew I wanted to make physical and mental health more accessible. Um, and it's kind of what my passion is. And then beach volleyball and yoga is kind of what I know and what I'm good at. So I thought that that would be the best avenue. And then as far as setting it up, I had to do apply for the LLC, get insurance, permits, um, kind of like the logistical stuff, inventory, stuff like that, income and expenses.
Mm,
And then also reaching out to mentors who are in the same space or similar spaces. So that was nutrition coaching, online coaching, yoga instructors, online yoga instructors, um, yoga, Pilates. So it was kind of various different people in my network, just talking to them and how they did things when they were first starting, things they would avoid,
mm,
they would suggest, apps they're using. Is there a way I can save money making starting my business? Like, do I have to be paying for all of these services and stuff like that? As much as you're willing to research and consider all of like the outcomes and manage the incomes of those, then it's only going to pay off for you in the long run.
mm.
So I would say start, but also do your research.
Yeah. What was the best thing that you sort of invested in that has helped you?
Hmm. Um, I would say my education and also my mental health. Education is something that is fortunately and unfortunately so important to
Mm,
success. It's also is a business, and it's something we also talked about in our cohort. But just being able to learn about the body, about my muscles, about how to fuel them properly and efficiently. It's really basic once you learn it,
mm,
but to be able to learn it was so cool. I'm like, as an athlete, I'm like, I feel like I have the secret cheat codes to being a super athlete. Um, like I'm so lucky and so fortunate, but it's like, wow, like when I started paying attention to my nutrition and my training, um, I really saw the reflection of that in my success on the court and also in the classroom, which is
mm,
where I think I even made the biggest strides. I used to be kind of the the kid that would procrastinate, pull the all nighter before. So learning how to manage my time and take academics as a priority was something
mm,
that transformed throughout college. Did not have that tool or resources in high school. So learning that allowed me to sleep more because I could manage my time more. It allowed
mm,
me to focus more on my training. So I wasn't always catching up on homework or studying. So instead of feeling like I was playing catch up all the time, I felt like, okay, I have a breath. I can take
mm.
a breath.
Yeah.
And so,
What
but
are some tips for time management that you have?
say that again.
What are some tips that you sort of found useful for time management?
So a couple things I do like are notes. So I have notes on my phone that like my grocery list, what my plans are for the day, my coaching schedule. I also like post-its, like little reminders.
Mm,
Um, and also like having boundaries, like, okay, this time to this time, I'm sleeping. Like this is my sleep time. Like breakfast and dinner, um, you know, we're always going to have breakfast first thing in the morning, dinner together before we go. So just like things that kind of stay consistent, and then there's allows for more flexibility to do other things, more like social things. So if I
mm,
have all my trainings and my rest in place, um, then it makes everything else easier. So I would say pick 2 or 3 priorities and set those in place, and then the extra curriculars or extra activities you have, then they can kind of fit in wherever. But for me, non-negotiables are my nutrition, cooking out,
Mm.
training. That includes beach volleyball, lifting, conditioning, and yoga. Um, so finding a way to incorporate those is huge for me. Also, connecting with friends. So I'm going to connect with at least one friend this week from college, for example.
Mm.
I text them, you know, don't forget to reach out to Mahalia or Rachel. They're busy this weekend. Reach out to them next weekend, or it's their championship match tonight. So, make sure you check in, see how they did, something like that, and that
Mm.
put on your notes, just like little reminders, and then also an overarching schedule. So,
Yeah.
Google Calendar, huge. I also have an app for my business, which helps me stay organized with finances and my website. So the more you can organize, prepare, plan,
Mm.
I think the more you can keep your priorities and kind of manage your time accordingly.
Yeah. No,
But
that makes sense.
perfect. I'm not perfect with it, and I'm still kind of learning. It's like my first time being not a student athlete in the last 6 years. So I'm still learning how. What do I do with all this time? uh, what is this time?
No, that's a good point because as student athletes, you do have a lot of things that you need to manage. Like you need to keep up with your schoolwork, but then you've got like 1 to 2 training sessions a day, or you like you've said, like you place a big importance on your nutrition. Like you need to make sure that you're fueled through the whole process as well. You need sleep. Like how is it managing all of that then compared to now?
Yeah. Well, it is nice because they provided all the meals and they did their nutrition on it. Like the nutritionists take care of that. So luckily, like I've talked to older college people that have been through the whole athlete identity after college, conversation. I've had that
Mm.
countless times. How do you transition out? That's also why I got my yoga certification, because I knew I'm like, I need something um, to kind of help me mentally and physically as I transition out of being a student athlete. And then also, um, I guess, kind of reaching out to people that have been through it, and
Mm.
how they manage kind of different activities. And I would say I have taken a lot of that from like a super young age. Like when I was 13, I was training on my own, doing all that stuff kind of on my own. Um, did not really have like a lot of guidance, so I messed up. I didn't do it right the
Mm.
first time. I used to go to the gym, and I was like, all right, I have to do every single machine until I can't do that machine anymore. Like, had no understanding of push pull, like in season, out of season. I was like, I guess this is what you're supposed to do. No one taught me. So I was like, I
Yeah.
guess this is what I'm like, okay, I guess I do calf raises, 500 of them, and then do whatever it was. Um, so I learned to like dial in. I'm like, okay, let me outsource. Let me find a professional who knows what they're doing. Um, so I was able to get like a strength and conditioning coach. Okay, that's one thing I don't really have to think about. I just know I show up and they're gonna have the plan, and that's it. Nutrition, something I also battled with. Um, Disordered eating. I wouldn't say an eating disorder, but just my perception of it has definitely
Mm.
changed. I would say I love food. I love making food, but I love food to taste good as well. So
Mm.
finding the balance between food that tastes good and also being able to make food that tastes good um, was definitely a process that took me um, years. I learned how to like really cook and refine my cooking skills during COVID. Something I really wanted to work on. So
Yeah.
I had a couple international students who couldn't go back home during COVID, and so we got to all make like family dinners,
Nice.
our own little bubble, um, which was huge. Like to be able to connect and have like a bubble community
Yeah.
at that time, I think was huge. Being able to come together, share meals, just transformed my view of food. And as I
Mm.
learned more about how the structural makeup of food, it helped me to not attach so much to kind of what that meant. I'm like, okay, as an
Yeah.
athlete, I need protein, carbs, fats. I need these micronutrients. When I'm, at certain stages of my menstrual cycle, I need to eat more. Maybe I get more dehydrated. Kind of just adjusting as I go and listening to
Mm.
my body. It hasn't been an overnight process. I started trying to learn my nutrition when I was in high school. So I would say I don't think I had a great grasp of it until my sophomore year of college. So it took me probably like 4 to 5 years to really figure nutrition out. Same with strength and
Yeah.
conditioning. I would say that took me even longer. Learning the balance between pushing myself in the right ways and the most efficient ways
Mm.
probably took like six to 7 years too. So
Yeah.
nothing happens overnight.
100%. I've got this saying where it's for people who don't exactly know how to do strength and conditioning and apply it properly
Mhm.
until they've got like a coach or someone that's able to help them and advise them is you don't know what you know until you know. So
Right.
that just kind of means like it's by having these conversations is the only way you learn how to effectively manage your load, manage your sets and reps, manage sort of the overall recovery process and how to effectively apply these to your sort of athletic career.
Mhm.
Um, with in terms with your menstrual cycle, you kind of mentioned that sometimes you like to eat more or less or be well hydrated. What
Mhm.
are some of the other impacts that you've sort of felt with your menstrual cycle and being an athlete?
So actually, one I noticed is like I'm more angry when I'm
Mm,
like menstruating. So like one thing is talking with my teammate before we're competing, be like, "Hey, you guess what? I play better angry, so we're actually in luck." So just even communicating with your teammates, like, "Hey, this is where I'm at today. Like, I'm still gonna come out and compete hard for you, but no, like this is where I'm at." Or if I have the luxury to rest and recover, and I'm not in season, then I'm gonna take that extra day. Maybe I
mm,
don't sleep as well because of it, or whatever. Like, okay, then my risk of injury might go up. So, am I doing something high intensity? Maybe I make it a medium intensity day instead. So, just kind of managing things like that. Also knowing when to push. Like sometimes it's okay to
mm,
push through pain, push through different things. That's part of kind of adversity, and learning how to be resilient is important. And just kind of finding your own balance and in what that means for you. Sometimes it's low energy, high energy. Sometimes it's just like the mood. Some days it just. Um, but I mean, I feel like I've been an athlete long enough where I've learned to kind of manage those.
mm.
Some days it's like, okay, I need caffeine and Advil before I play right now, um, and that's what it takes. Like that's all. Like my coach is like, "Whoa, what happened?" I'm like, "Red Bull and Advil, and that was it." So I'm like, sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. Other days it's like feel great. Some days,
Yeah,
you know what? We're gonna take it one breath, one pass at a time. Um,
yeah. How have you sort of how do you manage your menstrual cycle and how it lands within your sort of when you can push and when you kind of can ease it off? Like, do you have any apps or any ways you manage it?
yeah, so I just downloaded this app that my friend suggested to me. It's called Avia. It's AAVIA, and it
Yeah.
allows you to track mood, period, body, skin, sex, sleep, appetite, like various different things. about kind of your body. So at different times of the yes, at different times of the month, um, you can kind of know what your body's doing. I also have the Aura ring, which tracks my sleep, and I can track my cycle, my body temperature, my
Mm.
resting recovery rate, my heart rate, stuff like that. So it helps me know how well I recovered, my activity levels for the day, um, my body temperature, so I can tell like if I'm getting a fever before I actually show symptoms of being sick, or also my body temperature increases or decreases depending on what point in my menstrual cycle I'm at. Um, so those are like other factors I
Mm.
consider. I'm like, is my heart rate variability good, which means I recovered. And if it's high, that means I recovered well. I can probably go again, same level of intensity. If it's like you really didn't get great sleep last night, like you can push it, but it probably won't benefit you much to push.
Mm.
So it doesn't mean don't do a lift. It just means modify it in a way that it's going to benefit you. Or
Yeah.
maybe instead of a lift that day, you do like a light yoga and a walk, or that's like more of like a recovery day.
Yeah. So how does the training sessions look like when you're sort of feeling a little bit more anger or more like sensitive to the load, essentially?
Yeah, so I would say, um, well, so I go to coaches, so my practices don't really change much. Maybe instead of doing 3 practices a week, I do 2 practices a week,
Mm.
which are each 2 hours. Just reducing my overall workout, my output for that.
Yeah.
Um, I need more energy going internal. So I think that's one way I do it. Yoga and walking are kind of my go tos for like slowing things down. Um,
Mm.
and then conditioning, usually I won't do like long endurance. Maybe I'll do some quick sprints just to get like sweating and stuff. So sometimes I feel fine. I don't even notice. Other times it's like, whoa, you need to really relax. Sometimes, I cramp, my back tightens up, makes my hips tight. So then I need to do extra yoga. So it kind of depends. But sometimes it can be drastic, sometimes not so much.
Yeah, that's the thing. I kind of previously mentioned that this is my sort of area of research, and it's something that I've sort of came to realize is like not 1 month looks the same for like in terms of your menstrual cycle. So it's like it's finding that balance between when you can push, when you can't, and then just sort of measuring out what each month to month feels like.
Yeah, definitely. And it comes with factors again, environmental factors, and um, can be a big one. Like, am I in a warm climate, cold climate? Like,
Mm.
uh, community is huge. Culture, I think, um, can all have impacts into your kind
Yeah.
of your bandwidth, how much you
Mm.
want to kind of give. I think summer, spring are high output seasons. Fall, winter are kind of lower output in more input seasons. So um, just
Yeah.
knowing like the natural ebbs and flows of life, and that like sometimes you're gonna ebb, sometimes you're gonna flow, and that's okay. And just learning how to ride the waves and what you
Mm.
need at those times. I think so much of the culture tells you push harder, leave when you're dead, like can't stop
Go
this,
hard or go home.
go hard to go home, like you know, I I'm gonna out train everyone, when it's like no, it's just kind of you versus yourself. And like I know what's gonna allow me to sustain for longer, and what that looks like. And a lot of the things that I was doing weren't sustainable, so I was like, that's okay. We regroup, we figure it out what is sustainable, and we keep kind of moving. So sometimes
Yeah.
it's going to take you 2 steps back to go 1 step forward. and that's okay.
100%.
Just knowing like it's okay to take 2 steps back too.
Yeah. With your current training schedule, how does your competitions and sort of traveling, how does that all work just now?
Yeah, so this is like off season for AVP, so done with that. There's FIVB tours right now, which are international, which I haven't started competing in yet, but I'm looking to start. Um, so that is actually happening right now.
Mm,
And AVP will start, I think, end of March, April, and that goes through October, November, mostly October. So that's when a lot of those competitions are, which will what I will be competing in. CBVAs also are similar to AVP schedule. Um, so those are like the two main that I compete in, not internationally.
mm,
So kind of like off season right now. So training is less. I'm training 3 times this week, but after that, I go down to 2 times per week for practices. So that's one way I'm kind of reducing my load. And then more, I like to do more yoga this time of year when it's kind of colder too. Um, let's see, lifting, I would say, is also less. Maybe in season it's more 3 times, 2 to 3 times. Now it's like 1 to 2.
mm.
But once I get to probably January, I'll probably increase in lifting. Conditioning, I'm kind of focusing more on right now. Just working on speed,
Mm.
and also like redirection, change of motion.
Yeah, that's very important in volleyball, especially beach, because you've got the added resistance of the sand and how it pushes. How
Yeah,
did you find going from a court to sand?
my body was so grateful. I'm like, wow, maybe I can play this for the rest of my life. Indoor, there was no way, but beach, I could for sure. Like you see the people still playing, and they're like well retired
Mm,
on the beach, which I love to see. I would say I get more touches on the ball, which I love. I was a little bit of a ball hog in indoor. I'm like, now there's just 2 of us on the court, so I know I'm getting at least one touch every time. Um, so that's kind of something that I enjoy. I like the kind of freedom and the independence of this sport that too. It's kind of like an entrepreneurial sport
mm,
in that you're doing a lot of the things on your own. There's not really an established like organization that kind of does it for you.
rules everything, yeah.
Yeah, so something I'm still learning to navigate. I'm in no way like I have like a super deep understanding of it all yet.
Mm,
But I would say from so far.
yeah. How important is it to have a good relationship with your teammate? Because obviously there's only two. And how important is it to like sort of foster and build that relationship?
Yeah, I would say it's the most important. I've said that since like before I even knew what I was talking about. Like when I was 10, 11, 12, I'm like, come on, guys, we got to be the best, the loudest. We're cheering, like the communication. We're talking about every ball, every pass, every set, every hit. I don't care what comes out of your mouth. Like you better be talking. Like in high school, I was like, all right, I don't care if you're saying what you want for lunch, but something has to be coming out of your mouth because the more we can communicate with each other on the court, like the more success we're going to have.
Mm,
And the teams that we had the best chemistry and communication were the teams that I was most successful on. And I also had the most fun on. So I was like, if we're playing the best, we're having the most fun, why not do this? So I think that's everything.
sorry.
The reason I still play and will continue to play is because of the people that I meet and keep meeting.
Mm,
Being able to foster relationships um, with them, I think it's beyond being on the court with them. It's like, do they trust you? Do you trust them? Do you know each other's strengths and weaknesses? Like, can you support each other when you're not playing well? Things like that. I think are super important to keep in mind, and also goals. Like, what is your goals? Did you talk to your partner about their goals?
Mm.
Are you guys on the same page about that? Like game plans? Do you guys have similar strategies? Do you have different ones? Both are okay, but do you talk about it?
Yeah.
Just learning how to communicate, also learning to listen. I think that's the big thing that I
I
still.
love that. Because like you can only be as good as you can listen to your teammates' sort of goals and plans.
Right, yeah, and like, and every day could be different. So the more you can be kind of in communication with them, like the more you're gonna have a be able to pick up on the patterns and everything. Like, okay, this is their baseline. This is like what I can expect from them, and then this is where I can push them. This is where they can push me.
Mm,
And this is the areas we give each other grace. We give each other space. I think all of them are important. The push, the
100%.
pull, and then also just what are you bringing every day?
Yeah. In terms of goal setting and building, like what's the process that you go through as a team and then as individuals?
So one thing that we focused on a lot at UW that I still kind of keep with me would be like to not really focus on the outcome. We call it surrendering the outcome,
Mm,
which is super hard to do when you're a competitive athlete, and all you want to do all the time is win. Everyone does, but that's not really in your control. Um, there's things that you can do that are going to improve your chances of winning. Um, but whether you win or lose is not really in your control. So I try and define it by, what is my vision? What do I want this to look like? Like how I play,
mm,
like the way I play, like the way I coach. What is my vision? It's like it changes. It changes as I learn, as I meet new people and learn new experiences. And I just have to be okay with knowing that it's going to mold. It's like clay, like it's going to change over
mm,
time, and that's okay. What success looks like, for me, I'm just starting. I haven't experienced a lot of success as a professional beach volleyball player, and so finding what that looks like for me now is also changing. It changed when I got to UW. It changed when I got to Davis in high school club. So redefining what that looks like. I think if I'm healthy and happy,
mm.
enjoying, then I think that's what success looks like. And if the byproduct of that is winning, then like even better.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, then it's like, okay, what things can I modify or change to improve my chances of success? But it's never like, okay, now I need to win at all costs, so I'm going to abandon these things. Like, no, it's like kind of just gradually learning and refining what works for me and what doesn't.
Yeah. When it comes to sort of the process with sort of having a partner that you're playing with, how does that process work?
Yeah, so um, excuse me. At UW, we had no control over who we played with. There's obviously people that you play better with, not good with, but at the end of the day, the coach is the one making that decision. How can you impact that? You improve your relationship with your teammates, and if you have a
Mm,
better relationship with them, chances are you'll play better together. That's one way that I guess you can, without having control of the situation, improve your chances of playing with them.
yeah.
Outside of that, now it's just you just ask people, "Hey, do you want to play in this tournament together?" And they say yes or no, and then you sign up. Things that factors that matter: location, where the tournament's located, where these partners located, um, the cost of entry into these tournaments, and how accessible they are, and then also like do you guys play well together? Like, do you guys have the
Mm,
same styles? Like, are you willing to work with each other on these things? And knowing um, that it's like some people, they find their partner right away, they stick with them the whole time. Other people like have played with 12 different people on the AVP tour for 12 different tournaments. So It doesn't look one specific way.
Mm.
I would say the teams that stick together have the greatest success once you get to the top. So if I could find a partner that I think we could do well, like together long term, then that'd be the situation. But you never really know when or if it's going to happen
Mm.
like that. So you just kind of you gotta hope and
Hope.
hope that things don't work out. You gotta control the controllables and kind of let the cards fall beyond
Yeah.
that. But just knowing that I did everything I could mentally, physically, socially, emotionally, whatever,
Mm.
make this situation happen. Best case scenario, then that's all I can be proud of at the end of the day.
Yeah, 100%. What would be some advice that you would give volleyball players coming into sort of the higher levels or collegiate?
I would say that's a great question. Um, Definitely use your resources. You know, that means if, say, you have a history of mental illness, your first thing you do when you get on campus is you're finding the sports psych or therapist. If you
Mm.
struggle in school, the first thing you're doing on campus, okay, I'm going to go find the tutors or whatever. If you don't know how to fuel your body, which most athletes actually have no idea when they're getting into college, especially. How do you fuel your body? Okay, go ask a nutritionist, a dietitian. You know, use your resources because college is a space that you get so many resources. So take
Mm.
advantage of it. Write down a list. Like, don't overwhelm yourself. Like, okay, there's so many resources. I'm not going to reach out to any of them because which ones do I reach out to?
Mm.
Pick two. Say each semester I'm going to go, you know, either join a new club and go meet the nutritionist. Take a buddy with you. So I think those are some ways you can help alleviate some of the transition into college.
Mm.
But I would say that stay true to you. It's a time where you're learning a lot about yourself and deciding who you want to become. And I think that's a time where you can be a little bit selfish, see what works for you, and then also you can kind of just learn more about yourself and ask a lot of questions from mentors older than you, younger than you.
Mm.
Make learning lifelong, and then it won't feel so big in college. If you're
Yeah.
always curious and you're always, talking to your teachers, like be friends with your teachers. Like, okay, if you have three teachers each quarter and you have what 12 quarters, like okay, 3 times 12, that's 36 people you can have in your network for life
Mm.
if you use your resources like wisely. So I would say always, use your resources, um, connect, find your community.
Yeah.
You're gonna need it. That's gonna be your take you through the highs and the lows, like the good times and the bad times, and just know
Yeah.
that you're gonna experience both in college. There's usually something that you're gonna have to learn for the first time once you get to college, and that's okay. But if you have a support system there, as an athlete, usually you have one kind of built in, which is super nice. But um, not all athletes find their community
Mm.
um, within athletics, and that's okay too. You can find it in school, you can find it in clubs, in different hobbies. So just finding what works for you and knowing that it's not a one size fits all, and you're gonna have to experiment. That's kind of what I did. Is like what works for me is not going to work for them, but if I can provide more access to what works for me, like maybe it'll work for more people.
100%. I think that's actually something that messed me up at my time at UW was like you work on quarterly as opposed to like having 2 semesters
Right.
for the whole year. So I was like, when Colin was talking about like his academic and like how it was like quarterly and the athletes were the same, and I was like, Seems like a bit extreme.
Right? I know. Like I was on quarter system like from Davis and also at UW. So I was like, well, the good thing is it goes by fast.
Mm,
And the thing that I still hold with me from my freshman year, I remember I asked Kalechi, she was a senior on our team, who was just like the most inspirational woman I've ever met. But she always said, it goes by fast, but you feel every second of it. And I was like, dang,
mm,
that's so true. It's like it happened so fast. So like soak it up, but also like no, it's flying. So do what you can
yeah,
to prepare and use your resources because it's just going to make it easier on you in the long term. If you can have this
yeah,
built in from freshman year, like the rest of your career is going to be that much easier.
yeah. When when I was sort of speaking to the athletes and everyone on the team, I realized how different the university system is from America to the UK. So
Hmm.
like we have 2 semesters, and at my uni at least, I think it's most, but we've only got 3 modules per semester,
Hmm.
and each semester only has 2 sort of hand-ins, which is like your module 1 or module 2, and that's like you've got 2 assessments per module, so that's 2 4 6. That's 12 a year, and but like when you look at Americas, I've got something like almost every week. I was like, I'm good.
I'm good. Seriously, it's like how much are we actually learning when you're reassessing kids each week? Because we don't learn that fast. You might
Yeah,
learn some stuff, but like you're not picking up on enough content if it's like each week you're like just boom, 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 boom. So I would say, but it does really force you to either learn time management or
mm,
you're going to be playing catch up. Because getting 1 week behind in a quarter system when there's only 10 weeks, it's like, okay, well, now I'm working on a fifth of my homework for the entire
mm,
quarter in 1 week. If you just kind of miss one exam
yeah.
or anything. So
That's why I feel like student athletes are some of the most, like, it's one of the most intense processes you can go. Like, people just see, like, oh, he's a student athlete or she's a student athlete. Like, their life's amazing. But you don't see, like, the other side, which is how much work they have to do just to, like, keep competing. And, like, some of these top schools, like UW and, like, use are like it's quite a big school. Like it's an intense school to be at.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you look up and you're like, I don't know how I did that. I just took it one day at a time. But also just super lucky and fortunate circumstance to be in. You know, I know how many people would do anything to be in the position that I was in, and I'm super grateful that I had that opportunity. I know how many resources and hardworking people it took to make my experience happen, and that it's very, very rare to have
Mm,
the experience that I did. But I'm just so grateful. College athletics is such a unique landscape that you can't really see
mm,
in society really in any other way. Um, I think it's unique in that. My boyfriend always jokes. He's like, um, he says we're doing like Navy SEAL training. Being a student athlete, he's just kind of like started reading David Goggins. I don't know,
mm.
but he jokes that he thinks that we're like Navy SEAL training. I was like, I don't know if it's that intense, but I know where you're coming from.
David Goggins is a different beast as well.
He's a different beast for sure.
I've read his both books and I was just like, damn, how can one person fit so much in one day?
For real, I was like, all right, let's start smaller. But yeah, he definitely helps me keep perspective too. Like a lot of things had to happen for me to kind of get to that.
Mm, yeah. What kind of advice would you give coaches coming into the industry and sort of coming into that space of beach volleyball?
Yeah, would you say coaches coming into beach volleyball or in?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I would say one, have a plan, but be willing to divert from that plan. And that means having space to listen to your athletes and know that maybe my initial plan isn't going to be what's best for my athletes, and finding what's best for them is going to be the priority. Just listening. Also, plans just keep you organized and prepared. And also, don't do it if you don't love it. And
Mm,
if, yeah, it's not something that you're kind of really willing to commit to, because the impact that coaches have had on me and I think have on so many people is so astounding. So if you love it, keep doing it and keep kind of spreading the passion of beach volleyball, but also like always remember to be inclusive of everybody. And that just doesn't mean like location, like including everyone from
mm,
every location. It's from every background, socioeconomic status, country, like whatever, like ability. Being able to include and listen to everyone's needs, and
mm,
tailor a plan that works best for them, I think is the way you're going to find the most success, the way I have found the most success as a coach. Um, but also, yeah, just knowing like it's a relationship like any other relationship, and the more open
yeah.
communication you can be, and like the more kind of planned and future focused you can be, like the more kind of long term, I think, gains you're going to see with your athletes. So
100%. I think the best way to describe that is just like I like to chalk it down to just be human. And I
just
think
human, yeah.
yeah, and it's just like it's so simple. Like coaching in itself is simple. Like yes, you need the theory, you need like the knowledge of it, but at the same time, it's just like be a human.
Right, yeah, because like, I mean, sports, they're fun. Like once you learn the sport, like, okay, how can I best translate this sport to another human, right?
Mm,
The best way to do that, to learn anything, is to connect and to kind of share information, like we're doing right now. Like I feel like just like such a great way to learn is just by communicating and about what your needs are and what your goals are, like where you are, where you need to go or want to go.
yeah,
But I think, yeah, communication and inclusion are probably my two biggest takeaways for coaches. And
yeah,
passion, like have a passion for it, but
yeah.
also like know like your impact really matters to a lot of people.
This is something that I've spoke quite openly about, like with when people ask me about this industry and how I feel towards it.
Hmm.
It's like you wouldn't be either like playing sports or being in this industry if along the line you've not had like a really good experience with a specific coach.
Right.
Like for me, it, there's 100% been a couple, but like the most memorable one for me was one of my so the way that rugby works across here is like you've got a high school team and then you've got like a club team.
Hmm.
During the high school it's like very specific periods and club is like all year round. But my high school rugby coach comes up to me, like he takes me away from the class and he was like, how did you feel like that game went, and like what would you do if like what would you have done better? Like that's a coach coming to me, an athlete, and ask me like this intense breakdown, and I was like I asked her honestly, and to me that's always stuck out, and that's what I kind of want to always provide for my athletes is like
Hmm.
give me some feedback, tell me honestly what you thought about the session and why we're doing what we're doing, and
Hmm.
then hopefully we can foster these sort of relationships and this way of like if you're ever in trouble in the industry, come to me and I'll help you out as much as possible.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. I think it's like It's like we're all interested in like the same things. Like we just want to better our athletes. And what better looks like, I think, is
Mm,
different on each coach. Um, something I've learned like in our cohort is like, yeah, you do have to be a good person. And like just because coaches in the past have gotten away with yelling and screaming at their athletes to get the best out of them doesn't mean that's what's most effective. Like,
mm,
okay, maybe there's another level. Like, okay, maybe they do perform well when they're in fight or flight because they're conditioned to, but maybe there's another level that we can unlock if we can learn to expand what it means to be a coach. And, I think one thing that we talked about is how, like, not regulated coaching is in America. Like in Brazil,
mm,
it's considered an occupation. You have to be certified to be a coach. United States, that's not required. So, you have this idea of what it means to be a coach, and that standard is so different across different lines, across different states, different from youth to professional to college, high school, um, club, even. You see different standards being held, when in reality, there's no standard for coaching. So, where we got these standards from, I don't know.
mm.
But I think that to continue to improve the field of coaching, not necessarily standardizing coaching, but at least like creating a psychologically safe environment where athletes can learn,
Mm.
similar to like the classroom setting. Um, I think that's going to be like the best way, I think, forward as coaches, and learning to
Yeah,
give a little bit of what we learned ourselves, and maybe consider that like how we were coached isn't necessarily the best way. Maybe there's another coach with a better way, and being
hmm,
open to that when the opportunity presents itself, that like, hey, maybe I can learn something here if I kind of open my ears and my eyes.
yeah, 100%.
Mhm.
Um, we're into the viewer question now. I put a story up,
Uh-huh.
which you were kind enough to share. We've got a question from Rachel
Oh,
Churila.
Rachel Jarilla, yes.
Yeah. So she asked, "What are you looking forward to in the new year?"
Ooh, I like that. Well, I feel like in 2023, I have planted a lot of seeds. And so, what that means for me is things are kind of in the beginning, in the inception. And that's part of like the ebbs and the flows. It's like I just started my business, I just started playing professionally, I just moved down to LA area. And I also just finished a big chapter in my life. I finished grad school, being a student athlete, moving down the coast. Um, and so I'm just kind of at a big transition period where I'm kind of planting seeds for my future. And so
Mm,
seeing them start to grow and come into fruition, I think in 2024 is what I'm most looking forward to, as I establish myself kind of as a coach and as a player. I think it's going to be pretty cool. Cool to see.
yeah. No, I love that. And thank you so much for coming on. Like, the sole reason I started this podcast is something that you've already mentioned, is like we get this opportunity to speak and like share experiences with different coaches and just like how we've sort of been through this industry. And I think that's, to me, my favorite part about this podcast is that I just have to coaches on that have like the similar like mind growth set and just like willing to keep pushing the boundaries of coaching and just how it's done. I love that.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's always good to catch up with some dogs too.
Nice. You'll appreciate this every single,
Hey, let's go.
and that's why the lights are always purple as well.
Oh wow. Oh, I love that.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything that you sort of want to plug or shout out?
I would say that I just started a new business in the South Bay area. It's called Equator LLC, and I give beach volleyball small group lessons and private lessons, as well as online yoga classes. And I do provide lifestyle and or film sessions, which is like consultation. We talk anything from strength and conditioning, nutrition, just general lifestyle habits, kind of how we did here today. But yeah, if you're in the South Bay and you're interested in any of those services, I'd be happy to take you on as a client. So sign up
Nice.
with the link in my bio.
And I'll shout out your Instagram as well because I went through it and I found some of the yoga videos quite interesting, and I
Mhm.
quite like to go through them. So that was dope to see as well.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Nah, it's good. Thank you for coming on.
Yes,
Appreciate
thanks
you.
for having me. Appreciate it. Have a good
Peace.
one. Peace.